Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm 19 years old. Today is a day I'll never forget. It's my first day of college. As I woke up this morning, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness swirling inside me. The alarm clock barely had to ring before I jumped out of bed. I've been waiting for this moment for so long, but now that it's here, I can't help feeling a little scared. I took my time picking out an outfit that would make me feel confident. I chose my favorite blue sweater, hoping it might bring me good luck. Then, I double-checked my bag to make sure I had everything. My notebook, pens, and the campus map I'd printed out last night. My heart was racing, but I kept telling myself, "You can do this." Before I left, my mom peeked into my room with a smile. "Ready for your big day?" she asked. We had breakfast together, and she gave me some encouraging words that helped calm my nerves. It felt good knowing she believed in me, even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. The bus ride to campus was both exciting and overwhelming. I watched as the city passed by, feeling like I was stepping into a whole new world. The other students on the bus were chatting and laughing, but I stayed quiet, staring out the window and trying to imagine what my first day would be like. When I stepped off the bus, the first thing I noticed was how alive the campus felt. There were students everywhere, walking, talking, and rushing off to who knows where. The air buzzed with energy, and for a moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. It was a little overwhelming, but also exciting. This was the beginning of my new adventure. I pulled out the map from my bag and tried to figure out where I was supposed to go. My first class was in Building C, but the map wasn't as helpful as I'd hoped. Everywhere I looked, there were unfamiliar buildings with strange names. I muttered to myself, "Okay, Emily, you've got this. Just breathe." As I wandered around, I noticed a group of students handing out flyers. One of them smiled at me and offered a welcome brochure. It had a colorful map and a list of events for the week. "Thanks," I said, feeling a little less alone. I studied the map carefully, trying to figure out the fastest way to Building C. After a few minutes, I decided to follow a group of students who looked like they knew where they were going. Unfortunately, they led me to a completely different building. At that moment, I started to feel a bit panicked. My excitement was fading, and I worried that I might be late for my very first class. I stopped in the middle of a big courtyard, surrounded by students who all seemed to know exactly where they were going. I looked down at my map again, but it didn't make any more sense than before. My hands were shaking a little, and the noise around me felt louder than ever. Why is this so confusing? I thought, trying to hold back my frustration. A group of students walked past me, laughing and chatting, making me feel even more out of place. I decided to ask one of them for help. "Excuse me, can you tell me where Building C is?" I asked nervously. The student shook their head and said, "Sorry, I'm new here too." I forced a smile and thanked them, but inside, I felt more lost than ever. I pulled out my phone to check the campus app, but the signal was weak in the crowded area. I paced back and forth, hoping I'd figure something out. Just when I was about to give up, I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, you look like you need some help," the person said. I turned around and saw a student with a friendly smile, holding a map. Relieved, I nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm trying to find Building C," I said. The student chuckled and replied, "Don't worry, it's tricky on the first day. Follow me, I'll show you." As we started walking together, I felt a wave of gratitude. For the first time that morning, I thought, maybe today will be okay after all. As I followed the kind stranger through the busy campus, I finally started to relax a little. They introduced themselves as Alex, a senior who remembered how confusing their own first day had been. "Don't worry," Alex said with a friendly smile. "You'll figure everything out sooner than you think." Their calm energy made me feel a little less out of place. As we walked, Alex pointed out important landmarks like the library and the cafeteria. This campus can seem huge at first, Alex explained, but once you learn a few key spots, it's actually pretty easy to navigate. I nodded, grateful for their help. Suddenly, the sea of unfamiliar buildings felt less intimidating. When we reached Building C, Alex asked me about my first class. I explained that it was an introduction to psychology, one of my favorite subjects in high school. "Oh, that's a great class," Alex said enthusiastically. "I took it last year, and the professor is amazing. You're going to love it." Hearing that made me feel more excited than nervous for the first time all morning. Before parting ways, Alex wished me luck and gave me one last piece of advice. Take your time. It's okay to feel a little lost at first. I thanked them sincerely and watched as they walked off to their own class. Standing in front of the building, I took a deep breath and stepped inside, ready to face the rest of my day. When I walked into the classroom, I quickly scanned the rows of desks, trying to decide where to sit. Most of the seats were already taken, and the hum of conversations filled the room. I spotted an empty desk near the middle and made my way over, hoping no one would notice how nervous I was. My hands gripped my bag tightly as I sat down. A few minutes later, the professor walked in with a big smile and a confident presence. "Welcome to Introduction to Psychology," they said, and the room fell silent. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Then the professor said something I wasn't expecting. "Let's start with an icebreaker." My heart sank. Speaking in front of strangers was not how I wanted to start my first class. The professor asked us to pair up and share something interesting about ourselves. A girl sitting next to me turned and smiled. "Hi, I'm Mia," she said. I introduced myself, trying not to sound too awkward. Mia's easygoing nature made it easier to relax. We talked about our favorite subjects in high school, and I mentioned my dream of becoming a psychologist. Mia said she was an art major, and we bonded over how nervous we both felt about starting college. By the end of the activity, I realized it wasn't as bad as I'd feared. The professor's engaging introduction to the class caught my interest, and Mia's friendly attitude made the experience much more enjoyable. As we packed up to leave, Mia suggested we exchange numbers to help each other with notes. For the first time that day, I felt like I had made a real connection. As Mia and I left the classroom together, we talked about how overwhelming the first day of college felt. "It's nothing like high school," Mia said with a laugh. I nodded, sharing how I'd already gotten lost earlier that morning. "It's been a day," I admitted, and we both laughed at the chaos we'd experienced so far. We decided to grab coffee before our next classes. As we waited in line, I noticed how easy it was to talk to Mia. She asked me why I chose psychology, and I explained how much I wanted to help people through difficult times, inspired by my own struggles in high school. She listened intently, nodding as I spoke, which made me feel like she genuinely cared. Mia then shared her story about choosing art as her major, even though her parents weren't fully supportive at first. "It's scary, but I feel like I'm doing the right thing," she said. I admired her courage and felt comfortable enough to open up about my own fears of fitting in. It was amazing how quickly we connected through our shared experiences. Before we knew it, it was time to head to our next classes. Mia suggested we meet up later to explore the campus together or even study. I agreed immediately, happy to have made such a genuine friend on my very first day. Walking to my next class, I realized how much brighter everything seemed now that I wasn't facing it all alone. After saying goodbye to Mia, I felt ready to take on the rest of the day. I made my way through the busy hallway, holding my coffee cup tightly. The campus didn't feel as overwhelming anymore, and I even caught myself smiling as I thought about how the day was going so far. But, of course, life had other plans for me. As I turned a corner, someone accidentally bumped into me. My coffee spilled all over the front of my blue sweater, The one I'd chosen so carefully this morning. "Oh no!" I gasped, staring at the growing stain. My cheeks burned as I noticed a few people glancing at me. For a second, I froze, unsure of what to do. Before I could panic, a voice behind me broke the silence. "Hey, are you okay?" I turned around to see a girl holding out a pack of tissues. "I'm Sophie," she said with a kind smile. I introduced myself, feeling a little embarrassed, but grateful for her help. Together, we dabbed at the coffee stain, though it didn't seem to do much. Sophie suggested we head to the restroom to try cleaning it up properly. As we walked, she shared a story about how she'd spilled juice on her professor's desk during her first week of college. Her humor and kindness made the situation feel less terrible. By the time we finished cleaning up, I was laughing along with her, and the mishap felt like just another part of my first-day adventure. With my sweater mostly clean and my spirits lifted, I decided to take a break before my next class. The morning had been a whirlwind, and I was starving. I made my way to the cafeteria, where the smell of freshly baked bread and coffee filled the air. After grabbing a sandwich, I looked for a place to sit. That's when I spotted Mia waving at me from across the room. I quickly joined her at the table, happy to see a familiar face. "Rough morning," she teased, pointing at my slightly damp sweater. I laughed and told her about my coffee mishap. She shook her head, smiling. "First days are always chaotic," she said. Her words made me feel a little better. After finishing lunch, Mia suggested we explore the campus together. I thought it was a great idea, so we headed out. She showed me some of the best spots she'd found earlier, like the library and the student lounge. Then, we stumbled upon a quiet garden hidden behind one of the dorms. It was peaceful, with colorful flowers and a small fountain trickling softly. We sat on a bench in the garden, sharing stories about high school and our goals for the future. I told her about my dream of becoming a counselor, and she talked about her passion for art. The more we talked, the more I realized how much we had in common. By the time we left, I felt more connected, not just to Mia, but to the campus itself. As the day went on, I started to feel more comfortable with everything. Walking to my last class, I thought about how nervous I'd been that morning. Now it seemed almost silly. Sure, I'd gotten lost, spilled coffee, and nearly missed my class, but I'd also met some amazing people who made all the chaos worthwhile. I thought about Alex, who had been so kind and patient when I felt completely lost. Then there was Sophie, who turned an embarrassing moment into something I could laugh about. And of course Mia. Her friendship had made the day brighter and reminded me that I wasn't alone in this new chapter of my life. During the final lecture of the day, I even found the courage to ask a question. The professor's encouraging response made me feel proud of myself. It was a small victory, but it felt big to me. I realized that facing my fears and stepping out of my comfort zone was the only way I could grow. As I left the building, the setting sun cast a golden glow over the campus. I paused for a moment, looking around and taking it all in. It had been a challenging day, but also a rewarding one. I knew there were more challenges ahead, but for the first time, I felt ready to face them. This was only the beginning of my journey, and I couldn't wait to see what came next. As I boarded the bus to head home, I couldn't help but replay the events of the day in my mind. It had been a roller coaster of emotions: excitement, panic, embarrassment, and finally, a sense of accomplishment. Sitting by the window, I stared out as the campus slowly disappeared in the distance, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. On the ride home, I pulled out my phone and saw a message from Mia. She had already created a group chat with Sophie and me, calling it First Day Survivors. I smiled and quickly replied, feeling grateful for these new friendships. It was comforting to know I wasn't going through this experience alone. When I got home, my mom was waiting for me in the kitchen, eager to hear about my first day. Over a cup of tea, I told her everything, from getting lost on campus to spilling coffee, and finally meeting Mia and Sophie. She listened with a warm smile, laughing at the funny moments and encouraging me during the tough ones. "I'm so proud of you," she said, giving me a hug that made me feel even more confident. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on how much I had grown in just one day. College had seemed like a giant mountain I wasn't sure I could climb, but now, it felt more like an exciting journey. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but I also knew I was capable of overcoming them. With that thought, I drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow had in store.